taking place within the African American community over a lot of the stuff that's going on politically, economically. So some of the billionaires are saying to the other ones, you have to focus on, you're just not focusing on money. And that's part of the problem, that you're not focusing on money. So recently, someone came out and was like, and pulled up a dialogue that was taking place with one of the billionaires, saying it doesn't work like that. It says our leaders have always had vision. They didn't move with money. And then there was like a whole list of political civil rights leaders. And so that's the same thing with the Muslim community. The Muslim community has always moved with vision, and that vision is who we are, who we believe, what we believe in, and what we think about ourselves. That's why we begin with this, because in the trying to understand Revelation, we're trying to understand ourselves. Some scholars have even said that, you know, really the core of the Quran is knowing who the human being is. And when we know who the human being is, we know that we're not God. And we know that we live in the world, and we know that the world is not God. And we begin to know who God is, because nobody has ever seen Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Revelation comes and teaches us who Allah is by signs. And Revelation tells us to to look at the creation and reflect upon it properly, because those are also signs. And to look at ourselves as also a sign, right? So if we come to know ourselves properly, then we have a better understanding of who Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala is. That's a part of, if we go back, that's the first thing that the Quran is telling us about ourselves. Then we understand truly the meaning of Al Khaliq, the meaning of Al Alim, and the meaning of Al Hakim, right? And the names and attributes of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala become clear to us. But the lack of vision, right, is what gives us this problem, right? We don't take the lessons properly. Right? So here it says that he was just initiated into prophethood. That's it. The initiation began, right? And I want to at least cover this before we want to move forward. So now here we begin to see another phase. This Surah Al Muzammil, has been so designated after the word Muzammil occurs in the very first ayah. This is only a name and not a title of its subject matter. Right? So the period of revelation here. The two sections of this surah were revealed in two separate periods. The first is unanimously agreed upon, according to what he's saying here, as a Meccan revelation. It was revealed in Mecca. And this is supported both by subject matter, the contents, and a hadith, which tell us that when it was revealed. Right? So those are two important things to understand, that the subject matter of the surah itself will designate whether it's Mecca or Medini, whether it was revealed in Mecca or Medina. And then there's other supports with ahadith when it was revealed. As for the question, in which specific period of the life at Mecca it was revealed, it is not answered by the hadith, but the internal evidence of the subject matter itself. That means he's reading the Quran carefully enough to be able to look at the Quranic context along with the seerah, to be able to match the two together, right? To be able to match the two together. But the internal evidence of the subject matter of this section helps to determine the period of his revelation. First, in it, the Prophet ﷺ has been instructed to the effect, arise during the night and worship Allah so that you may develop the capability to shoulder the heavy burden of prophethood and to discharge its responsibility. So that's important. That now, when we start talking about the issue of the mission, and the issue of the dawah, the issue of handling life issues in general, when it comes to maintaining the deen, that we have to have some time that we're developing ourselves with Allah Ta'ala, right? For what purpose though? Here we see the arise toward the night and worship Allah so that you may develop the capability to shoulder the heavy burden of prophethood. So the issue here is our development as Muslims is not just for what? For our own personal gain on the spiritual level. A lot of what we're doing in spirituality and everything is very selfish. You know, one of the things that's interesting about motherhood itself is that the body prepares itself for motherhood, but it prepares itself in such a way to be able to give to another life. And so then, the mothers, they have to learn how to be thoughtful of what? Of other beings from an early period. Sometimes as men that we disengage unless we're people of community. And when we're people of community, we have that understanding. People of family, we have that understanding. Because we already see it in the family. It's not, we see it, so it's modeled for us. Women is a little different because their bodies and their relationship to the children and the family puts them in that situation. But men have to see that. They have to see it. If you grew up in a family where the father never shows emotion, how do you think that child is going to be? They're going to imitate the father. If you grow up in a family where the father is always angry, then the child basically grows up imitating that. But if you grow up even with that type of situation and you live in a community in which there's certain adept that's there, then you will begin to take on that adept. That's like you can have your children, but if you send them to school on a regular basis, they begin to conform to what? The adept that's out there. And so the thing about it is that developing ourselves is part of it is understanding like what is our role to ourselves, what is our role to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, what is our role to the family, to the community, so on and so forth. So here, more specifically, the Tahajjud Salah, it was obligated in the beginning of the Dawah. And some people swear by the Tahajjud Salah. They say that the Tahajjud Salah, some people that are very consistent with it, they say that the Tahajjud Salah opens up a lot of support for them spiritually, right? And so they say that when you have problems, to basically direct yourself to Tahajjud in the middle of the night when no one in the family knows, nobody knows, to pay attention to the Tahajjud. And here he says, arise during the night and worship Allah so that you may develop the capability to shoulder the heavy burden of prophethood and to discharge its responsibility. This shows that the command must have been given in the earliest period of prophethood when training was being imparted to the Prophet ﷺ for his role. Secondly, a command has been given in it that the Quran be recited in the Tahajjud Salah for half the night or thereabout, whatever that you can do as far as whatever is easy. This command by itself points out that by that time, at least so much of the Quran had been revealed as could be recited for that long. You see how he's reflecting? He's reflecting with the Quran. Thirdly, in this section, the Prophet ﷺ has been exhorted to have patience, right, at the excess being committed by his opponents, and the disbelievers of Mecca have been threatened with torment. This shows that this section was revealed at a time when the Prophet ﷺ had already started the da'wah to Islam, and opposition began, and it had grown strong and active. And we'll end with this paragraph about the second section of verse or the ayat 20. Although many of the commentators or the Mufassirun have expressed the opinion that this too was sent down at Mecca, yet some others regard it as Medini. It was revealed in Medina. And this same opinion is confirmed by the subject matter of this section, for it mentions fighting in the way of Allah. And at that point in time in Mecca, that wasn't the case. That happened later. And obviously, there could be no question of it in Mecca. It also contains the command to pay the zakat. And it is fully confirmed that the zakat at a specific rate, right, would with the nisab that was enjoined, that you have to give a specific amount at a specific time that was obligated in Medina. That was obligated in Medina. But here in the beginning of the dawah, what you see is that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had, he had that base, that spiritual base, and he had opposition. But one of the things is to be patient with those people who what are opposing the dawah. Here, we want to end with this note that we have to be careful how we deal with the people in this society, because this is the only chance that they have to understand Islam. And if we, and I've said it before here, I've said it in this place before, and I say it again, and I say it to the brothers and sisters. The Muslim community has to train itself to be in the mode of dawah, because what we may accept as practice from a dawah perspective may be problematic. Like the way we deal with women, complete strict separation or everything, fine. We know that some people practice that. But if you have average Americans coming into that environment, they don't understand that. Even some of our sisters and brothers growing up here in this country don't understand it. If we have, one of the brothers was talking to me how they didn't let a non-Muslim come into the masjid. Here in Chicago, he was telling me, one of the American brothers, he was saying, I have a problem with some of the masajid because I have no place to take the non-Muslims for doubt. So this one has an issue with the non-Muslims coming in. And so, from a dawah perspective, if we're not open to these types of things, it's gonna be uncomfortable. And sometimes they come in with tattoos. And sometimes they come in with shorts. Sometimes they come with no hijab. Sometimes they come with tight clothes. But we have to determine, like, what are we in the business in? Are we in the business in of just preserving our iman and whatever it is that we have of our deen and our practice? Or are we in the business of establishing ourselves in our practice and supporting the growth of the deen? You see the issues, and for some people they have determined that it's just us and our practice, how we practice, and whoever conforms, whoever doesn't. But the mission of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was he had to be patient with all of those types of things. He had to be patient with people that were still committing shirk and calling them to the deen. He had to be patient with people that had the wrong understanding of women. He had to be patient with people that were still oppressing other people in the midst of calling them to the dawah. And, and so Muzammil, one of the takeaway points is Surah Al-Muzammil is clearly telling us if we don't have the spiritual base, there's no way that we can carry on, with the mission because it becomes personal attack. Yeah, the human interact, even for ourselves. Sometimes the traditions that we have in the Muslim community make it harder for us to practice, and Islam makes it easier. And sometimes we're so stringent or strict on some traditions, we hurt ourselves too. Some things, and this is one of the things that I mentioned when I was at the conference. I was like, look, we have to take an honest assessment of ourselves as a community. We have war trauma, we have refugees, We have poverty. We have people trying to maintain wealth so that they can support themselves and their families and extended families. And we have all these political issues. We have so many issues. And so it's like we have to take account of that in order to, how are we going to deal with each other? So when families get mad at each other in the environment, is it worth it at the end of the day? We have all these other problems. There's some issues that you have to put to the side. If you can't get along with your husband or your wife, and you know that this is the condition of the ummah, some things you have to let them go because it leads to greater instability. I'm not saying accept abuse, but I'm saying some of the things that you hear from some people is very selfish. Whereas, like, we're really what we should be doing is looking at ourselves properly to see how we can grow better. If you pay attention to what's going on in different communities, you begin to have compassion. If you look at what's going on in society, the breakdown, if you see what's going on with the children, single female headed households, or you see fights over custody. I just heard average some Muslims in some communities, the average amount that they're spending on divorce is $50,000, fighting back and forth. So there's a character issue sometimes, and there's a pressure issue sometimes, and there's, like, again, knowledge issue, like the issue of custom. We have to realize what kind of pressures we're under. We have to learn that there's different ways to do things, and we have to learn that we can come across solutions. And we have to realize that we're part of a bigger piece. Sheikh, one of the mashaykh in Egypt, he was saying there was 30,000 divorces. This was like, it's been maybe like 8 years now that I heard it, so it's probably more now. 30,000 divorces a year in Egypt by itself. We're not even talking about the Muslim community here or anywhere else. But he mentioned, he said, if we keep going at this rate, this is the purpose of the example. If we keep going at this rate of 30,000 per year, and then in that context, once a woman gets divorced, there's really hard, remarriage. We keep going in that context, the whole society will be destroyed. And so it's the same thing. Like, we have to stop for a minute, pause here, and this here, at least the takeaway with this is a reminder of our own spiritual development. But we also have to be empathetic and see what other people are going through, right? And then gradually see how we can address issues. It can't just be that I'm just taking care of me myself and me and my children, and that's it. And my brother, he's struggling. I have some brothers like that. Or, it's not only their brother, or they're in the masjid, and how he feels is that this rich family, they'll make sure that they're okay with their children, and that rich family make sure they're okay with their children, and then me, you know, they're not concerned with my situation. And this is a rich community. I heard that the brother told me, and he cried. He said, man, he said if they know something to make their children more successful in dunya, they won't share with me because they don't want the competition. So that's a problem, that we're not supporting each other. We're not supporting each other in our development, in our growth. So that's important. It's important to understand, and I always want to keep emphasizing that what other people are going through, not just what I'm going through, what other people are going through, and have these conversations what we can do. Because that, after all, that's fundamentally going to be, at least for us, it's going to be what the dawah means. The dawah is going to be twofold. There's going to be uh, one is going to deal with us calling people to Allah, and the other one is us calling ourselves back to the deen and rebuilding the deen. But we want to. Anybody have any more remarks or? No, what indicates here is he wasn't towards the end. He was trying to figure out what happened. Why did it stop? Why did the revelation stop? Oh, you mean after the process? Yeah, you see that there's indication, at least in what we read there, that he's like, this is the angel that I saw in the cave of Hira, and that right, and that's why there was a break. There was a break because the load of revelation and the load of responsibility was so heavy. You know what I'm saying? That there was a break for him to be able to digest that, and it came gradually, and then eventually they had a close relationship. They debate on that. They debate. There's no exact number. They debate on that. Yeah, yeah. There's different opinions like that. There's different opinions where a couple months, something close to years. It's an issue where you almost have to just leave it. It's debate. Because they have opinions, but it's like, okay, if you say it's a couple months and this one says is more than that, what's the benefit? The reality is that it's just they they know that there was a break. What we did with this one, and that's why sometimes I pause because there's a better translation that's more perfected, and we're working on this one. It is one, but what we did here is different. Is we took the introduction to the surah of the Quran from the Tafhim, and we organized them according to the revelation of the Quran, not how they found in the Musaf, or not even how it's found in the Tafhim, so that when we're studying each introduction, because that's basically what we're doing, we're just becoming familiar. We're not going with a lot of the details of every ayah, so that we're able to see the bigger picture. We're able to see the bigger picture of the surah, and like for instance, now like you asked that question, you can see over time. Okay, there's this over in the beginning of the revelation, there was what was the relationship to Jibreel. So initially you see fear, and then initially you begin to see within that initial period, I should say, to be more accurate, you know like what you were mentioning, a comfort level. Those types of details are not always manifest or made clear if you study the Quran according to the order that it is in the Mus'haf. Right? There even the whole issue, like for instance, by the time we get to this point, Surah Al-Muzammil, now Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is encouraging spiritual sustenance. And then there's a clear relationship between that you have to sustain yourself, develop yourself spiritually, have that spiritual, go beyond just the basics, because the tahajjud is not basic. Tahajjud is beyond the basics in order to maintain in the dunya. That you have this responsibility now to deal with the dunya and to give the message. And so, but when we look back all the way at the beginning of the revelation, we were dealing with the cave of Hira. He At that stage he was trying to figure out, what do I do? How do I address the reality of the dunya? Right. So then, even here, the way that the Quran is educating us or shaping us, it has nothing to do with rejection of the dunya from the angle of deen is here and dunya is here. The dunya, we know that has no value in and of itself according to akhirah. But the point being is that Islam is balanced. It's not just you just focus on the spiritual stuff and everything else is bad. Else life can be established. But you see those types of relationships. That's the beautiful thing about seeing when the Quran is in stages, right? How the Quran is revealed in stages. How it's addressed to every situation. Now we go from the human understanding of who the human being is to the whole issue of being scared when you encounter the spiritual. And I'll tell you from a personal experience. I used to do a lot of meditation before, a lot of meditation. and and it was very beneficial, very very beneficial on a lot of levels, self contentment, peace. But there's points in the spiritual life where it does become scary. It's scary. It's another dimension. You're not, what other what people value, you don't value. It's just like if I were to tell you, go get something to eat. There's some things that you're just not going to eat. You're just not going to pick up a pork sandwich. There's something that you're not going to eat. You see what I'm saying? It's just not in your, even in the way you think or taste or experience. And so that's what begins to happen sometimes in the spiritual life, that the life itself, some things that people are find important, or it's just not, it doesn't have the same weight with you. And the scary thing is that, if you don't have balance, you can become extremely disconnected from people. Because why? Because you're on two different levels. You know what I'm saying? Two different levels. This one jokes, and then you see the intention behind the joking is to humiliate the other person so that he or she can look good in the group. You're not into the joke. You're saying, wow, you humiliated that person. You see what I'm saying? You begin to see through things. This one cares about the color of that person. You're like, we're all human beings. This one is showing off because they have this type of house and this type of car. It's like, okay, fine. What happens if you die tomorrow? So you start to change. So, I can't even begin to imagine what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam went through with the revelation, to the point where you get to that point where you don't know what direction to go in. And- yeah, yeah, yeah. In this case, and this was actually before I became Muslim, but in this, it was like a silent, kind of like a silent dhikr with a focus and stillness. Some people do it in Islam as well, and it has to be done in a way which is in conformity with the Sunnah. But the silence is important, and that's what we learn from the Cave of Hira. Everybody needs that. Parents need that. Parents need it. When I came back from Texas yesterday, and I was actually with Dr. Sabil and I sat next to each other. There was a mother in the seat in back of us. Wallahi, I was like amazed at the level of patience that she had, because like majority of the trip, her daughter was crying, and she would tell her, okay, hold on a second, and she'd, I want to sit with you, mommy. No, but you have to sit here. Ah, ah, ah. So the level of so you imagine you're with that 24 hours, 7 days a week. You need to take a break. And that's just in the case like of a mother. You need to take your time. What about a father? You're dealing with the issues from here, there, bills, that, whatever it is. People need their breaks. The silence is important. I was with Dr. Arif. We went to this. We had a period in which we had to wait for our flight. So he said, "Come on, let's go to this, like this. There's this relaxed area. It's like a club type of area. If you have a certain type of credit card, you get access." So he said, "I want to try it." So we went, and so we sat down. The seats were uncomfortable because it was crowded. It was more crowded than what we thought. But there was silence. There was silence. So I sat there, and it was just like I felt the rest. I felt rested. Now, when we got out to the rest of the airport, even though now there was a place, he said we should have sat here. This place has a rocking chair, the sunset. But I said, bro, there's no silence here. There's no silence at all. So sometimes the silence, just being in the silence, is healing. It's time with yourself, or you know, those things are all. That's why a lot of us feel anxiety. We feel anxiety. We don't know why, because there's everything. This, TV. There's problems here, there. There's no time to just relax. Yeah, your mind especially. especially if you drink a lot of coffee and you're thinking and you're this. The mind sometimes is more relaxing the mind. Sometimes is more important than relaxing the body because you can relax 8, 9, 10 hours physical sleep and your mind is racing and racing and racing and racing. Yes. Yeah, and so the part of the exercise with that is silence. Also breathing is important. The breathing where you take the deep breaths and you release, you control, you release. That type, and then from there, you reflect, on Quran, reflect upon nature. You make dhikr, you make dhikr, especially those azkar from the Sunnah, you know, and then sometimes some ayat of the Quran. Like I remember one of the mashaykh, I had some personal issues. Like, say this particular ayat of the Quran, reflect upon. Nothing, everything out there. وَفَوَّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. That I resign my affair to Allah. Just reflect on the ayah of the Quran. And, what does that mean? And so but also that's one thing. Reflecting on the Quran is one thing. Dhikr is another thing. Silence is another thing. Nature is another thing, right? All of those things are needed in the self development. But also good friends, right? Healthy friends, and also, yani, like we say, yani hiwar mutanawa. Yani, it's a conversation in which it's not just politics, it's not just issues of Islam, it's not just issues of it's health. Sometimes a poem, you know. Yes, yeah. That if it's refreshing, that's the we're gonna end this right here. But if it's refreshing, if it's